Last week, I talked about Jill Duggar's book, Counting the Cost, which is a powerful memoir that Jill wrote about her time growing up within the Duggar family, her interactions with TLC, the Josh Duggar story. I mean, she really covers all of the stories that we've seen glimpses of. She's given us an unprecedented look at her personal experience within that world. And we get a lot of looks at IBLP and the religious side as well. And there's one piece I touched on in the review that I think kind of became an aside to the interview or to the review that I wanted to talk about a little bit more in depth right now. It's something that I keep thinking about. And that is the fact that the Duggar lifestyle was so unattainable. When you see a family that has 19 kids, your immediate instinct is to go, how do you pay for that? Like grocery trips for one kid or two kids is extremely expensive. How do you have 19 kids and they have houses and cars and, on top of that, Jim Bob's buying jets and all that sort of thing. And it's clear throughout the book, Jill says that in IBLP, they were referred to as a model family or looked to increasingly as a model family, the more fame that the Duggars got. And the Duggars were indeed a model family for many people within the IFB. For my family, they were not, but I know families like the Duggars who were pursuing that lifestyle became inspiration for other people within that religious group. And the Duggars, I know many people who were influenced by the Duggars and looked to the Duggars as, religious influences and spiritual, markers to follow. And when you really start diving into Jill's book and to even Ginger's book to an extent, you start seeing how untenable that lifestyle really would be for the average person. Most people do not have the money to live the kind of life the Duggars did, yet they're being taught from organizations like IBLP and through the Duggar books and through similar materials that are very popular within evangelical and IFB world that you're to be fruitful and multiply and have a quiverful of children and that God will provide. And, I know there's a variety of different religious beliefs of people that listen to the show, but I think we can all agree there is having faith, and then there's also being practical and being a good steward, if we want to use a biblical word. And the truth is, while many parents and young people that were raised watching the Duggars were told, squeeze out as many kids as you can possibly without dying. And even if you come close to dying, continue to squeeze out those kids. You are a baby factory, and God will provide. It put a lot of financial strain on people. And it concerns me when I see kids growing up in families that can barely afford to take care of them. Is money everything? No. But when kids are struggling to have shoes or have decent education or eat nutritious meals or fill in the blank due to the decision of parents that was kind of coerced and a decision that was kind of pressed upon them, I think that's a really unfortunate thing. Now, for those of you that are going, what are you talking about? I mentioned in the last episode of the show this story that Jill recounts in her book where they go to Aldi. It's stuck with me probably the most of anything in the book, ironically, maybe just because it really hit home for me as someone that grew up with parents in ministry, and financially we never had much money. And yet I saw, friends in similar positions who've, the parents just kept driving and doing things that were harming their family in the name of religion and ministry. And anyway, in the book, Jill talks about them going to Aldi as a family, and they're going with a documentary crew from Discovery Health. And she says, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, that we discovered that the crew was going to be paying for it. And she said all of us kids were super excited. And finally, we got to have things besides like bean sandwiches and basically tater tot casserole, like these very cheap meals that they were used to eating, because that's the way that the Duggar parents at that time could afford to feed their, I think, 17 kids at the time. And you see in the book this switch where it's like, as Jim Bob starts negotiating these documentaries, you've got things like their grocery bills being taken care of and their home being paid for, the construction of the big house, as she calls it in the book. All of these different things become financed through essentially TLC. And Jim Bob essentially ends up making well over $10 million through the course of the Duggar show and that Duggar fame. And so one of the things I just think we should analyze and continue the discussion around, and I want to keep talking about this over the next several episodes, is the idea that the picture perfect lifestyle of the Duggars and this idea of God providing for the Duggars and this idea of anybody who pursues the quiverful lifestyle is going to have this is just not true. What Jill said is true. Reality and reality TV could not be more different. And reality had to be kept as far from that TV show as possible. And so anyway, it's just something I want to mention. I don't have like 6 points and an outline about it. It's just something that keeps bouncing around my head since reading the book. And I wanted to keep kind of pushing that forward because I think it's something that, whether it's the dress or the courtships or the finances or the education or fill in the blank with anything that looks so positive from the Duggar lifestyle, like most of it's just untenable. And beyond the Duggars, much of the teaching in the IFB, when you have pastors and teachers and evangelists teaching something that to a layperson is impossible, but to them who are collecting love offerings and have the support of 260 people in a church, it's a very different lifestyle. And I don't think that's taken into account very often. So if you are watching on YouTube, be sure to leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts on this particular section of the book. If you are not and you're listening to the podcast, congratulations. You don't have to see my ugly mug, but go over to social media and be sure to drop a comment. I'd love to continue this discussion because it has stuck with me so much. And it seems to be one of the things I just keep finding myself thinking about. And again, maybe it's because I grew up in a very poor ministry family, but that book, part of the book really, really resonated with me.